You're tuned in to RX Radio.
It's been a while.
It's been too long. I miss this.
This feels like, you know what this feels like? It feels like an Adirondack chair in your office, always.
So nostalgic.
It's wild to have so many like OGs of the podcast now. Like I had just people someone referenced, and I don't know what they were talking about, but I must have been talking shit about a kid named Ethan at some point in episode 310. And someone like commented like, hey, did you ever find that Ethan guy? I'm like, no, I just no, I didn't. But two, that's hilarious. That's hilarious that people like, I mean, I've seen this happen to you because I've been with you when it's happened, where people like, hey, in the podcast you said, and you're like, oh shit, what did I say?
Yeah,
that usually checks out.
Yeah, no, I usually just lead with an apology.
That's best. Yeah. But so we're back, not necessarily in the Adirondack chairs, but we had the opportunity to record podcasts for the last 3 weeks. But we didn't. We were in the same room, but we definitely did not have the opportunity.
No.
So fresh off the heels of Prescript Level 3, we are now back with regularly scheduled programming. Huge shout out to Thayer and Mac and Jorge and Schultz and all of the co-hosts on the Prescript or on the RX Radio podcast. We should call it the Prescript podcast. I think it's what it gets referenced to most often, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just finished up L3 in Tampa. Some housekeeping out of the gate for those interested. In Prescript Level 3, 6-day course that we run in Tampa. The next one will be in January. So if you're not on track currently and you're an L1 coach, you can reach out to us. The Prescript Level 2 is by invite only. If you get into next semester, it will make you eligible to join as long as you pass. Join us in the L3 in January in Tampa, Florida. So feel free to reach out, info@pre-script.com. Shoot us a message on Instagram, and we'll get that registration link over to you. It's exclusive for those graduated Prescript Level 1 coaches. If you're currently in the program, if you're currently in the L1 class, we're about 7 weeks in, you can feel free, reach out to me. We'll get you a contingent link, making sure that as long as you pass and you get into L2, then you should be good to go. So if you guys are already looking ahead into L2 and wanting to take that in hopes to come out to Florida with us in January of next year, feel free to shoot us an email or shoot us a message on Instagram. Now, if you're not in L1, registration is currently closed for the semester. The next semester will be going live in late September. We do offer one discount and one discount only, and that's for people who are on our waitlist. So if you go to www.pre-script.com, go to the L1 page, you can leave your email there and hop on the waitlist for next semester. And that semester, as mentioned, is going to be late September this year. So we're a couple months out. We're early July-ish. So get on the wait list. We send you an email when registration opens with a unique code just for you. Actually, it's the only discount we offer on the course. So if you're interested at all, get your name on the list. Head on over to prescript.com or pre-script.com, and we'll see you in the September's class. Now, the main event. It's something that I think strength and conditioning wasn't cool when we started doing it.
Right. It was pretty grimy. It was like just the high school / college weight room where it's like rusty bars. It's not glorious, and people just going in and like going rounds in the weight room.
Yeah, and it's odd to me that its popularity and, dare I say, coolness has taken a backseat to the trainer. Like, and there's some reasons to why I think that is. Like when I think of strength and conditioning coaches now that are, working in the field, but also understand the importance of the social media presence and creating content. It's a job that you can't do online.
Right.
And that pains some people to hear, because I think some people, they really try to pride themselves as online strength coaches. And look, there are strength coaches who work online, but they are also working in a facility. And if you can do that, then sure, like that you've checked that part of the box and you can call yourself a strength coach who works online. But I don't think online strength coaching is as close to the core product as, let's say, online coaching. Like if you have someone who's lifted for a while and they had a personal trainer and they're just looking for some general guidance and some advice, maybe on nutrition or exercise execution or programming, or maybe even just accountability. I think coaches online can offer a tremendous service that is much closer to the product that they had provided at some point, hopefully in their careers, in real life. I think I see a lot of our guys, we think of McIntosh, we think of Pagare, we think of Thayer, we think of Baxter, we think of Killian, we think of guys who've cut their teeth in person. And Stu, I want to name all of the guys now. Jorge, Schultz, Ridpath. I always feel like I'm missing someone.
Ooh, Big Phil.
Big Philly cheesesteak.
Yeah.
When we think about the products that they provide, or the services they provide in real life, they are exceptional in real life and they are exceptional online. And there's an understanding of the limitations and the constraints. But at the end of the day, I think you can reach a much closer product when you go from a personal trainer, coach to online coach. In the strength and conditioning world, it's a completely different set of rules. Like, there are things you need to understand about strength and conditioning that are fundamentally different than personal training. And it's one of the things that we see, because I think what we learn when we host level 3 courses is, for the most part, not always, we've had Dom Caudry out, we've had Dylan Hines out, we've had Veronica, can never say her last name. We've had people who do strength coaching in real life come out. So it's not like it's all personal trainers, but I would say the majority of level 3 students, and level 1, level 2, obviously as a byproduct, are personal trainers, coaches, or online coaches, or a combination or a mix of all three of those. And I think there's a lot to be learned about your product, about you as a practitioner, from getting experience as a strength coach. I think experience as a strength coach, even in a transient setting, and we've seen this time and again with L3, gives people the tools they didn't know they needed in their coaching, personal training, and online coaching space. And it's interesting to watch people come to these realizations. I think people have come out to the level 3 historically to maybe learn a little bit more about biomechanics, or learn parts of biomechanics that we don't cover in L1 and L2 in like ton of detail. Like learning sprint mechanics is a big one. Learning plyometrics is another one. Like, these are things that people might use in their coaching, but I think what they leave with is something that they didn't expect, and it's all of the intangibles of sorts of being in an environment that is set out for a different goal. Like, there are different mile markers when it comes to strength coaching that are different than when it comes to one-to-one PT. I'm curious, you've been to every single L3, obviously, you and I. What have been the big jump off the page or conversations that you've had when it's like, okay, you have a coach, personal trainer, online PT, online coach, comes into this space, flies out to Tampa, hangs out with me, you, Killian, Dante, Jorge Schultz, Thayer, et al. And what are the perspective shifts that coaches are running into? What do you think the fundamental differences are between one-to-one PT and coaching? Or sorry, one-to-one PT and strength coaching?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And to me, if I were to distill it down to kind of the basis of what the difference is, I think personal training is very predictable and very structured, right? I think strength coaching is, you have to be very adaptable. And I think that's the main thing that I've seen, that the paradigm shift I've seen in people is they come in, they're as prepared as they can be. They know all the players, they know all their injuries, they know, the workout they're going to do, they know the rehab stuff they're going to do. And then their player doesn't show up. And then they're with someone else that wasn't on the list. And they have to change their plan on the fly immediately. And I think that's the number one thing in strength coaching. And in that context, in the context of like the overview of what you're doing, who you're working with, but also like from session to session, it's one of the things that stands out to me in terms of exercise program. If we're working with, I don't know, a 45-year-old mother of 2 that wants to lose 15 pounds, we can map out every single session she's going to go through for probably the next 16 weeks with a relative degree of accuracy. And we can understand how to vary load and manage load and change exercise selection and variables around that, because everything in her life is exactly the same all the time. Versus if we're talking about someone that is, I don't know, a running back in the NFL, load management it's not going to be what you do in the gym. It's going to be everything that happens outside of the gym. So you have a very small role in load management in these athletes. So really what you're there to do is support everything else that they're doing outside of the gym. So a lot of times the workouts, it's not about like, people that aren't exposed to this, they might think like, oh, these guys are super strong, super explosive. Like you're probably using a ton of weight. Like they're probably doing, it's like, a lot of this stuff, like we're aiming for RPE 7. Like we're even on the strength movements. It's the goal is not necessarily to get these guys stronger. It's to make them more resilient. It's to make sure that they don't blow out a hamstring on the track the next day. It's to make sure that, they rehab that ACL surgery they had 7 months ago, and they do it to a degree where they can get through the entire next season. Like it's not about getting these guys stronger. And I think in terms of adaptability, something to realize is that they're not weight room athletes. I think a lot of people that go into personal training, they themselves are weight room athletes, right? They perform in the weight room because that's game day for them. But when you're talking to someone that plays a professional sport, the sport that they play is game day for them. What they do in the weight room is something that can give them an edge, maybe make them feel a bit better, maybe bolster their abilities. But they're not there to work out. They're there to play the sport that they play. So you need to keep this engaging. You need to clearly communicate the benefit to this and draw correlations between how this is going to make you better at the thing that makes you millions of dollars on the field. And that's actually a similarity that I can draw between the two, between personal trainers and strength coaches. The thing that I've seen the most is that the people that have the interpersonal skills, they can figure out the adaptability, right? They can figure out how to do the rest because they know how to read people. They know how to match energy. They know how to see if someone's losing engagement. They know how to pull them back in, and they know how to get buy-in around what they're doing. So I guess those are two of the big things that I've noticed is like the interpersonal skills are very important either way. And you can build those very well through being a personal trainer and transfer that really well into being a strength coach at a high level. The thing that's a little bit different is if you're stuck in that predictability or that structure that is afforded to you as you're a personal trainer, you're not going to get that in strength coaching. You have to have that adaptability. And I think that's the one thing that people get exposed to at the level 3 that they're not exposed to outside of that. And that just forces them to think on their feet, to make decisions faster, to really rely on the principles that they've learned to make those decisions and make them accurately and be confident in the things that they're doing.
I like that you called into question like the role of load management, because it's something that I was thinking about this earlier today. It kind of prompted where I what we're going to talk about on the podcast. I think when we talk to PTs and coaches and online coaches, the big emphasis as we talk about biomechanics is about load management, which hey, rightfully so, right? Like, we have a very finite amount of time to achieve what will hopefully be a clearly defined and a mutually understood goal between you and the client. I think that's like load management is going to be like the number one thing. But I like the word management. Management is a part of every important conversation that I have. Whenever anyone says like, what's the hardest part of your job? The word management is in there. No, but like think about it. It sneakily finds its way into everything. Managing things is like, if you were to ask someone what the hardest part of their job is, like as a clinician, my answer is going to be the hardest part of my job is managing expectations, right? I think as a business owner, I think we're super lucky in this case because we work with I literally work with my best friends on the planet. And I can tell you that unequivocally because all my friends are all over the planet. And Prescript is literally all over the planet. But there are parts of the business where we deal with external contractors where if you were to ask us in the last couple of days, and maybe we do a podcast episode just telling everyone exactly who the fuck I'm talking about, and maybe it will come to that. And maybe it'll come down to a defamation.
Can we say murder on the podcast?
I think allegedly that might be a defamation case. But depending on how the next 48 hours go, we're going to name names on this podcast. And we are going to just highlight exactly how difficult managing other people can be. Right? Now, again, this is our outside contractors. Shout out all the homies on the fucking team. You guys are the best. Appreciate you. It has nothing to do with that. You guys keep us in line. You're the reason we're in this position. You're all fucking world class. But we deal without external contractors. And this particular one is a giant pain in the dick. And depending on how the next 48 hours goes, I will tell you just how big and why this particular company, which I will name names, and I'll tell you the issues we had in managing people, right? So here we have managing expectations, managing people, load management. Like managing is a very big part of things that are important. What you could say, what defines something that is important is something that in some way, shape, or fashion has to be managed. If it doesn't have to be managed, it's probably not important, right? Now, with that, I love that you kicked off with like, it's not about load management. Coming full circle, I was thinking about the role of load management in strength and conditioning. And I started to think, well, maybe it's not load management, maybe it's time management. And one of the things that we see, and we saw like a lot of over the course of the last couple of weeks, was varying degrees of time management, varying abilities to manage time. Right. And some of it is like, hey, we start pulling on threads and we find problems and we find solutions and we find more problems, we find more solutions. And it's like, look, we got a whole off season, especially the NFL. Like, it's chilling. They play for 17 weeks. It's a sprint from September to January for most of them. If you play on the Chiefs, you play to February historically. And other than that, you're shutting it down. A couple intermittent camps between the off season, OTAs in April, May, and then back again in mid-late July. Pretty easy schedule once you get the hang of it. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, time management is a part of it. And I think it's something where you don't really have to factor in time management as much because you can't, right? In the sense that like you kind of get bottlenecked to load management because you know your client's going to come in when you're a PT or a one-to-one coach 3 to 4 times a week for an hour between the hours of 4:30 and 5:30, whatever the fuck, you know, like there's nothing really to manage. You manage load within that time, but the time isn't a variable. Let me tell you something about NFL off-season athletes or off-season athletes in particular. Some of them are very entrepreneurial. Some of them are very business-minded. Some of them are very busy. But most of them are not. Like, not even a little bit. They have nothing to do and no reason to do anything other than get ready for next season. And when you play a sport like football, honestly, one of the best things you can do to get ready after like a ridiculous 4 months of unbelievable physical and mental stress is to do nothing. So to no fault of their own, part of their preparation process when they're outside the gym is doing nothing. But you can kind of keep them in the gym for as long as you want. So time management becomes a little bit more important. But then you made a really interesting point. It's like sometimes they don't show up. Sometimes they show up. We had a dude, and he was probably one of my favorite new athletes that we worked with this season, who showed up on a Saturday and admittedly had been out till 4:30 a.m. and he was in the gym at 7 o'clock. I'm going to buy this guy's fucking jersey and have him. What an unbelievable athlete. Great story, 3 years in the league. He'll never listen to this, but if he does and he knows that I'm talking about him, shout out this guy. You're the fucking man. So I'm like, well, it's not really a time management thing anymore. It's a resource management thing. This is where I think strength coaching is all about. And like we're talking purely on the private sector, this becomes even more so the case when we talk about actual team sports. Now, we're lucky when we go out to train in South Florida, we have something that resembles a team, but they're not playing on the same team. Like we have the same guys that are routinely, for the most part, in and out. But resource management needs to be your primary focus. That needs to supplant load management in your mind when you're a strength coach. Your focus shifts from when you're a personal trainer, your focus is load management. When you're a strength coach, your focus is resource management, right? What are the resources at our disposal? Like, and we had conversations from footwear to jewelry to hydration to sleep to drug use to travel to home gyms to lawsuits, like the amount of resources, one, that you have at your disposal, right? These guys are looking to anything to get an edge, right? But also that can become a bad thing. There's a lot of distractions that come with endless amount of resources. And your job as a strength coach, resource management. Someone comes to you, hey man, like I saw this thing on Instagram, I'm thinking of getting it, or yo, this guy out here does this like stretch thing, I think I'm going to go to him. It's like, okay, if we're working in the strength coach world, I think our bigger focus needs to be on resource management. And like you hit the nail on the head, because I think understanding how to manage resources for a professional athlete and actually being able to act on that, like you can understand it theoretically, what might be best for the athlete, but the communication piece is the linchpin here. Like that is the thing that's going to act as the conduit to all of the brilliant thoughts in your head and actually making those thoughts become reality when it comes to imparting this advice or training or whatever it is, that those resources, they have to be very properly communicated to that athlete. So one of the things that I was thinking about and I like framing problems. That's the key to solving a problem. I think is framing a problem. I think way too many people work too hard on trying to find a solution to a problem rather than trying to frame it in a way where it's easily solvable. That's like, I think where great trainers and great coaches really win is they understand that the first step in problem solving is adequately framing that problem. Like I think of, and I don't know if you got this advice when you were a kid, but my dad used to, before I would take a test, and I'm talking everything from grade 3, I don't know, math. Did you take math in grade 3? I'm assuming you take math in grade 3, to writing my national board exams. He goes, do the ones you know first. Every single time, every test, I'd like walk out of the door at like 7 o'clock at night with my hockey bag. I'd be 20 years old going to play a game. And it'd be like, answer the questions you know first. I'm like, Dad, I'm going to a hockey game. I mean, good luck. Like, holy fuck. Like, he was so adamant that whenever I approach, in this case, a question or a problem, that I approach it in the right frame. And the frame of mind is like knowing how to solve the problem. So when you go through and you answer questions you know first, you put yourself in the proper framework for the next problem to solve. Or if you're multiple choice on a subject, you can start to see some negative outliers or some deliberate wrong answers, and you start to notice trends within the test. So you actually get information from the test that can help you solve the problems that you might not be able to solve, answer the questions you might not be able to answer. And like, I always thought it was like a little bit silly. My dad's an engineer, and like, he thinks a certain way, like engineers think. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But the older I got, and the more that I adhered to this, the more I realized, like, oh, that's part of the thing that I like about strength coaching in particular, is that it offers you the ability to frame things in a way that you know how to solve them. Right. So I think when you look at the problem of strength and conditioning, not that like it's a problem and the industry is in some state of disarray, but when you look at the problems that the career offers you, you need to understand that, look, the way you frame your problem to an expedient and effective solution is by looking at not load management, but look at resource management. If you look at resource management as like resource management and communication, you're going to be in the 1% of the 1% of strength coaches. Like, I think that's where a lot of PTs go wrong, but it's also something that, especially the communication piece, because I think we should spend some time on that. That's where I think most people get the biggest takeaway out of like a strength and conditioning experience. When they come to the L3, they might be very fixated on some of the technical stuff, like learning plyometrics and sprinting and programming in season, off season. But I think without a doubt, if we were to poll the L3 coaches that have come through, communication rises to that. I would say it's in everyone's top 2. Just saying.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that may be the most important takeaway from the level 3, and not to like pump us up or like sound like I'm bragging or anything, but a lot of feedback that I've gotten from people that have come through the level 3 is that they're very impressed on how prepared they are to be in the situation in terms of the technical know-how. And that's something that it's really cool to see. All these people that come in, they have the framework. They understand the things that they can be doing better, and they're doing it better than people that do this for a living. Not a word of lie. I was working with a guy who brought in his personal strength and conditioning coach from the Patriots. And I don't know, maybe I'm not going to name names, but this guy, he had an ACL surgery. Within the past year, he was recovering from it. And his strength coach that is employed by the Patriots, I have his email address. It's at Patriots. He had him squatting 3 times a week, like months out from an ACL surgery. And I think anyone who's gone through level 1, level 2 could quickly disprove that theory and why someone shouldn't be doing that. I had multiple people come up to me and ask me about it and like talk to me about it and propose better solutions than that for that person. So that's one thing that again, not to like pump up level 1, level 2, but to give credit to the people that are going through these programs, because I think that's a big part of it. It's the personality. It's the type of person that has been drawn to this experience and wants to learn in this capacity, that they're the type of person that they're going to think critically about these things and they're going to come up with the best possible solutions. And I hate to say that doesn't matter in this scenario, because it does matter, but that's not the most important thing. The most important thing here is being able to understand that you just have to do something and you have to communicate the value to that very quickly, even if you're unprepared to do so. Something that I've found to be useful in these situations, and I've seen people, and this is advice I've given people in these situations when they're unprepared for the situation that they're thrown into, because it can be chaotic, is just do something. It doesn't fucking matter what you do, but do something and be confident in what you're doing, and think of the next thing as you're doing that thing. Like, grab a foam roller. Ask your guy about his weekend. What did he do? What kind of car does he have? What does he like to do with his friends? Whatever. Like, ask him a question, learn about the person, but in your mind, you're thinking about, all right, what am I seeing? What do I need to work on? And you're building the workout. You're literally just one step ahead of where you are. And you're figuring out as you're going, like, your answer might not be the same as mine. Mine might not be the same as the next guy, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. There's multiple ways to solve the problems that you're seeing with these people. But if you can connect to them and you can communicate what you're doing and the value behind it, then that's what's going to get buy-in. And buy-in is the most powerful thing when you're working with these guys, because these guys got egos. These guys, they're the fucking shit, dude. They go to their hometown and they're the guy.
So cool.
They're so fucking cool.
They're the coolest fucking people in the world.
They're working out in shoes that I can't afford. Like, these guys are fucking sick.
Dude,
like,
Homeboy's won bracelet? Are you joking me? I'm not gonna name names.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Like, guy is like a 5,000. Takes the cake. And I feel our boy Lambo Lenny shows up with an RM on his wrist. I'm like, dog, what are you doing?
It doesn't
Pulls
make
up in
any
a
sense.
1-of-1 whip with, I don't know, my student loan on his fucking wrist. But it's like, good for fucking him.
Right.
Like,
yeah. These guys are the dudes. Like, these guys have more diamonds in their teeth than I'll ever own. Like, make a connection with them. Like, get to be their homie, and you're going to make progress then. Like, unless you break down that personal barrier, it doesn't matter what the fuck you know, because they're not going to listen. They're going to say probably some off color, slightly. We won't go. They're going to say some shit. Yeah. Sorry, Yannick. But, like, unless you can break through and you can make a personal connection and you can start to build that value in what you're doing for them, then they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck how well you know this stuff. You could be the smartest person in the room. If you don't have a personality that meshes with theirs, they're not going to listen to you.
I think they understand. I mean, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they understand what effort looks like. I think that is what athletes are really good. Like, you don't, like, when you start to be around any pro sports, especially pro athletes at the highest level. Like, I remember being in Halifax with, like, the best hockey players in the NHL last year. And, you know, we're training them. They're about to go back to their teams. And it's like very, very nerfed, like very light. It's like, you know, we have 4 days. They're going to be on the ice and in the gym. We're trying to get the best players around the best players, good competition that you could never get from going to practice with your team. And it's kind of an exclusive thing. So the workouts that we wrote were deliberately constrained to not be super heavy or intense, but the effort that was put into these workouts was like it was game 7, because it's like, you know, you name the best player that you can think of. He was there amongst every other best player you can think of. And now look, and I think athletes are so used to being around, you know, a wide range of effort that they understand when they see 100% effort. You hear stories like Michael Jackson, or I was at Buccaneers training camp with Brady's the year they won the Super Bowl. And this guy, no, do it again. Getting in players' faces, telling them to fuck. Like, yeah, because they understand where they're not seeing effort. They understand where they're seeing effort. And it doesn't have to be within their domain of competence. It's funny you brought up like that, hey, do something and grab a foam roller and just like be one step ahead. when I watch really good strength coaches, and we, lucky to have a bunch within our midst come through the level 3. When I watch really good coaches in general, I think of stand-up comedians. So like I've been lucky enough to work with a handful of stand-up comedians who are, selling out stadiums around the world. And one thing that I've noticed between all my friends that are stand-up comedians is that they have a really good fake laugh. Their fake laugh is indiscernible from the real laugh, which is like kind of fucking weird because I can't ever tell when they're laughing genuinely or not. And I think the reason to it is, I think, because that's what buys them time. So they'll do crowd work and then something will happen to be like marginally funny, but they're laughing not because they think it's funny. They probably don't think it's funny at all, but the laugh buys them time to lay down the response. So it looks like the response is immediate, but the response is actually on like a 3 or 4 second delay because they're laughing about whatever the prompt in the crowd work was. Like an interracial couple, or this guy's tall, or this guy showed up late, or whatever, and they make a crack. The crowd laughs. They laugh. They're not actually laughing. What they're doing is they're buying themselves time. And then the comeback seems quick because like, well, you can't really help it. He was just laughing because it was funny. It's like, no. Like this guy can control his emotions. He's doing that on purpose. That's what you're doing. It's like default to what you know. Like my dad said, right? Answer the questions you know first. It's the same thing, right? Like it just allows you to be in this hurts. Okay, great. Let's do this single leg instead of bilateral, or let's do the other side, or let's get into the TFL or the psoas or whatever. Like start with what you know. I think is such like and it's something that when we start to talk about contrasting and comparing strength coaching and personal training, I think that's a really good takeaway. Because we have such a predictable environment, we sometimes aren't really challenged to have that. Like we kind of coined this thing. We were driving to the House of Athlete one day. You told me the story behind 7-minute drill, right? So the J. Cole song that was part of the whole Kendrick Drake thing. It's still my favorite song to come out of the entire beef situation. And you told me the story about how that came to be, that he had 7 minutes to make a beat and then given one word and then to make a rhyme. So it's like when you're a PT, I find over time you can lose creativity because you lose the prompt to be creative, right? Because you're going in and just running through the set list, right? Because you're going in and starts at 9, ends at 10. She's probably going to walk in 3 minutes late. She's going to have to leave 5 minutes early. You're going to hit these 4 exercises for these number of sets. Maybe you get like a small PR on something and you can hang your hat and you're off to the races. But when homeboy shows up, 40 minutes late, but it has to leave in 35 minutes and doesn't want to do lower body because he doesn't want to do it, and you have your rack already set up for lower body, and he's like, "Nah, man, I'm doing upper body, or I'm going to split." True story.
Yep.
And 7 minutes. You wish you had 7 minutes.
Right.
You wish you had 7 minutes. It's like no. You got to come up with something that is, like you said, engaging. That it's well received, that can relate to. You can relay the purpose of what you're doing back to the thing they care about, and you got to come with that immediately.
Yeah.
Start with what you know. All right. Well, where do workouts start? Warm up. All right. Have a Rolodex in your mind. Let's hit a warm up, right? Like let's hit. Okay. What do you do usually after warm up? Usually a bigger compound. Are we doing upper or lower? Like it's building these frameworks is what allowed again, not to pump our own tires, but you said it earlier. Like that's what allowed the coaches to be so successful in that environment was that they had like when they got caught deer in the headlights of like. How many guys showed up with their friends? Yeah. How many of them? Like, yo, fucking shout out. Bring your whole crew. Like, we don't care. But like, who's the number of times we sat on the turf and we're doing a head count? And we're like, all right, like he's from the Patriots. He's from that. He's from there. That's he's from KC, Dallas, Indy, whatever. Who the fuck is that guy? I don't know who. The guy in the black shirt. Have you ever seen him before? Oh, that's his friend. What? Oh, I mean, all right, cool, whatever. Like, is he tall enough? Do we put him with his friend? Is he too short? Do we put him with someone else? Is he a big and the other guy is skill? Like, do we have to break them up? It's just like it's a good reset button for creativity. And I think Keely and I talked about this in an episode before. It's like I think this is a medium that is sneakily creative if you let it be. And it's not something I really noticed until like probably the last year or so. Like, wow, I really enjoy the creative aspect of that part of my job. I really enjoy the creative aspect of framing these problems in a way where they become easily solvable, right? And it's interesting to see the range of ability, usually based off of the range of exposure. Like someone who's exposed to shit changing all the time, no problem, seamless. It's as if the workout was already planned for them to show up 40 minutes late with their best friend. Like they walked in and it was just like, oh yeah, no, this is number 3 from the playbook. We're going to go best friend 40 minutes late, bam, workout. And it's to an untrained eye, it's like the comedian after the crowd work, right? Dab the guy up, they get his name, how you feeling, where you coming in from, but all the while they're buying time. Like, all right, we're building a system here. Like, oh shit, nice shoes. What'd you guys drive? You get a new car? Oh man, that's dope. You guys got Super Bowl money. Yeah. All right, here's what we're going to do. And it seems like it's just right up, but no, they nailed the intro. That's a shout out Dante. Dante goes through a lecture, and one of the things like nail the introduction. But part of nailing that introduction a lot of times is buying yourself some time, is laying that framework to build off of as you go forward, so that it does seem like this seamless interaction. I think the last thing that comes to mind, especially in today's kind of world with coaching and Instagram and fitness information, and then sort of like the very siloed world of strength conditioning and pro sports, is the difference between optimization and maximization.
Okay.
It's a luxury to have the available resources that we and our players have, primarily time, right? Like you have in some aspects, and when you get crunch time and you're in the season, it's a different animal, but off season, they can be in there for multiple hours, and most of them are, right? PT and conditioning and field work and all this stuff, position work, mental stuff, and then obviously like the training they do with us. But I think optimization is kind of like this coefficient of what should we do and what can we do. I feel like that's what optimal really is. It's like optimal exists in the center of this Venn diagram of things that we should do and things that we can do. Where maximization, it's like those two circles are one circle. What should you do? Well, what can you do? Everything. Great. Do that. Right? Like, when you read research, and I don't know where the prevailing research is at right now, but I remember, I want to say it was something to the effect of 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight protein intake was the suggested at a certain point. But when you read the research, you start to see the trend. Like, it doesn't just fall off a cliff and you still get return. The returns are relatively diminished as the gram per kilogram of body weight ratio increases. So let's say, for example, when you get to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, it's not as if it becomes less effective than 1.8. It's not like it becomes detrimental. It's just maybe not the most efficient for people who can't do that, right? Who, if you're dealing with trying to maintain a certain body weight, maybe that increased gram per kilogram of body weight threshold of total caloric, or that starts to affect the total caloric intake. A lot of these guys, their energy expenditure is so high that that's a case where you can maximize. Where most people in like the recreational fitness, recreational in the sense that they don't get paid millions of dollars to work out, where you compare that to pro sports, that would be where they get paid millions of dollars to work out. Optimal in the personal training world, I think, is, it might have taken on some flack for some of the inane setups and particular exercises. And I don't hate all of them. I think some of them are pretty clever. But optimal is doing the best you can with the resources that you have in the time that you have, resources being time, energy, money, equipment, whatever. But maximizing, you need to shift your framework to maximizing. Like, it's not about this coefficient of what we can do and what we should do. We can do everything because we are not limited on resources. So then that becomes like, all right, this is where resource management comes in, and the goal should be, how do we maximize? And the threshold becomes really their tolerance, right? Like, that becomes the thing, that the resource you have to manage. Like you said, engagement, communication, these are the things that if you can keep them in there, and they need to be in there, great. Figure out a way to keep them in there. Like, yo, dog, like, we need to get you on the bike after this for like at least 20 minutes, breathing through the nose. Let's try and get that conditioning up. Or maybe you got to get the guy the fuck out of there. And the vehicle of maximization is going to come down to that cornerstone of communication. But I think it's something that I saw a lot was people were hyper focused on the maximization hyper focused on optimization coming out of one-to-one PT and online coaching, but their focus should have been on maximization.
Yeah, I like that. I think we've definitely seen people that have tried to get it all done all at once. And I think it takes a level of experience to understand that sometimes the best thing to do is leave something on the table for tomorrow or the next day. Understanding the effort that these guys are going to give every time. If you give them everything they need to do, they might do everything every day. Like some of these guys they're just on that level where they're going to put the work in. Some of them not, but I think that's a big part of the experience that comes with this is understanding how can we maximize, and sometimes maximizing is doing less. Another part that I think is really important, and this is something that we really lean into in the level 3, is constant assessment. At the end of every single day, we'll group everyone up, we'll pull out the laptop, we'll put it on the TV, and we'll do a recap of how every single session went with every single player, and we'll talk about their injuries, their limitations, modifications, suggested exercises for them, things that they're going to have in their program, things that they shouldn't be doing in their program. So the idea of constant assessment, it's a vein that runs throughout this entire training camp in the entire level 3. And I think that it kind of plays into what you're saying before about creativity, is that, I don't know, I've been training people for probably 15 years or more now. I've done this a while. Every time I walk in that building for the level 3, I do exercises and movements that I've never done before. On the spot, I have to make shit up with the equipment available, the individual that's in front of me, the limitations that they have. I just figured this shit out. And the way that I go about that is, like we said, I do what I know. I just do something. And then there's this constant assessment process going on the entire time. What are they telling me subjectively? What are the words they're telling me? What is their body language telling me? Versus what am I learning objectively? How are they moving? What injuries do they have? What limitations do they have? And it's a superimposition of those two things that are going to allow me to understand, all right, these are the positions that are going to be tolerated. These are the things that they need to build strength or capacity in. How can I allow these things to coexist with the things that the movements that they shouldn't be doing, or the ranges of motion they shouldn't be moving through? And you kind of have to think through it in the moment, and you put together maybe exercises that look nothing like anything you've ever done before, but it's exactly what that person needs, because you need to constrain them to the point where we can get them to shift their hip laterally, but we can do it without knee flexion, or understanding how to create a neutral pelvic position. So that's a lot of dumb shit that I didn't need to say, but really the root of all that is understanding that it's constant assessment day after day. Every time you're working with someone, is that you want to be observing and you want to be talking to them and you want to be able to adjust what they're doing. And even if that's something that looks nothing like what the plan was for that person, you have to be assessing, you have to be understanding and interpreting what you're seeing and making adjustments on the fly with that. So I think that's a really important part of what.
I think it's as true on the communication side as well. And that's something that we talk about at the end of every day. It's like, you talk about going through the slides and being like, hey, so-and-so had this issue. Like, one of the issues we're on all the time, and it freezes trainers in their track. We talk a lot about unilateral movements. I think it's, as much as we talk about anything, obviously unilateral movements have their place. So we talk about, lunges and split squats and all these things. The number of times I've watched the red wire touch the blue wire in the brain of a coach who realizes very quickly that due to playing professional football most of their adult life and into their childhood and adolescence, that their big toe doesn't let them get into hip extension. Like that like if I want to just fuck with someone real quick, I'll take a guy who's had like turf toe or something, or I'll take a guy who's had, first med head issues, hallux valgus, something like that, and be like, hey, just do a lower body stuff with him. And I watch, because I know a unilateral lower body movement's coming by way of like Bulgarian, or by way of maybe like a B stance or kickstand RDL. And I know that at some point when that hip goes into extension, that person's going to be cued up on their big toe, and that motherfucker's not going to move. And you're just going to watch like the Matrix green letters run down their eyes and just be like, oh no, what do I do? And you problem solve. You do what you know. You do what you can, right? Like, you just solve for that problem. You need that problem to go away. Like that has to be remedied. And I mean, to your point about the communication, or to your point about like always assessing, one of the things that we were auditing every day was how are they being received? Like, do you need to give this person more space? Do you need to be in this person's face? Do you need to be, are you loud with this person? Are you like even the word? Are you choosing the right words? Like we had I won't air out the case, but every L3 moving forward, we are going to tell this story about, and it's really poetic to me because I'm actually writing the second volume of the L2 or the L1 manual. I started on that project, and the first chapter of the L1 manual, which I have here, shameless plug, is about language.
Yeah.
And it's really poetic to me that one of my favorite moments in this company's history is so far as it intersects with like our coaches and their students, was that it was really full circle that this was probably the last lesson that someone learned again, because it was like kind of bookended the experience for me. It's like, I remember writing that chapter, I don't know, 7 years ago. It was the first chapter of the book. I'm like, well, this is probably where I would want to start. And then to see that, like, and again, when you guys show up, or if you guys ever show up to L3, I'll tell you the story about just how important language is and like how your interpretation of what words mean might be entirely different. But that was like a poetic bookend for me. I'm like, okay, L3 is done. Like in the sense that like, we're not going to do a level 4. I think that's a pretty safe assumption to say, because it's like, there's nothing past that, right? It's like the communication of what you know is the value behind knowing. And we've had time and again people who rock up in person just be like, oh, it allowed me to actually take the thoughts in my head and make them real, which is something we try to do at L1 and L2. We sent a video out to the team from someone who took L1 who just had that same experience, who worked online for a bit, moved to a new country, got back to in-person PT, took L1 in the interim, and was like, I was blown away when I got back to work in person of just how prepared I was to communicate the things that I had learned, not just to know them arbitrarily and make content or write posts about them, but to actually impart them to someone. And he told the story, and we really appreciate him sharing the video with us. He told us the story that one of his clients works in prosthetics. Right. And the guy knows the body really well. And now he has this trainer who's gone through the L1 and is like, oh, I can communicate with this guy who works in, a very niche subset of biomechanics with the amputations and prosthetics. And I can hang with him on that. So it was really good. And I think it drives home the point that fundamentally what coaches, I think, what they need, whether they know it or not, because even if you're good at it, you're never good enough, is the communication piece. And it's the exposure to, because this is the thing, when you are everyone, and like we're kind of included in this a little bit, like especially on the clinical side, people that come and see us, a big reason why they come and see us is because they like us.
Yeah.
When you're a strength coach, and especially if you do it on a team level, people are coming to see you because they have to.
Yeah.
And they don't have to fucking like you. No one likes you. Which, hey, what's there to like? I mean, at the end of the day,
I don't even like me.
Right. Let's start there. Let's start there. I'm sympathetic to literally everyone, but it's like, I think at the very least, everyone walked away and communicated so well by the end of it that everyone was respected by the time they left, and that's fucking hard.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, kind of to sum it up, it all just comes down to application. Like this is the ultimate application piece, is you have to put it all together. You have to show up, you have to be able to communicate, you have to have the background knowledge, you have to be adaptable, you have to understand what you're trying to do, the deeper level concepts of load management, resource management, as you said, maximization, optimization, whatever buzzwords you want to throw in there. You have to be able to apply it, and you have to be able to apply it to someone that does this for a living. Right? These are people that use their body for a living. They've been exposed to strength and conditioning coaches at the highest level, which there's an asterisk by that, because even at the highest level, like there's great strength and conditioning coaches out there, and we have great strength and conditioning coaches in our network. But a lot of these people that are showing up, this is the best level of attention that they've ever gotten in the strength and conditioning space. And that's thanks to the people that are showing up and they're able to apply these principles, and they're able to be there, communicate, stand next to these guys and be confident and make decisions.
I think one thing that to add on that is, you talk about the level of care that they get in L3 being fundamentally different than what they get from their strength coaches. I think the mile marker for me, and this is a personal thing, and I've been working in this environment for a long ass time now. I think the mile marker for me, when you understand, when you get better at the problem solving, you start to see and recognize trends, when communication becomes the next horizon, where that's like where you really want to improve. It's like you kind of got the X's and O's down, as well as you can communicate them right now. What's going to push your X's and O's forward is your ability to communicate.
Right.
I think like, okay, if we can have a guy come in and surpass the efforts of a strength coach that they work with at the professional level, that's great. That's an unbelievable milestone for someone to come into that environment and do that. That is a badge of technical proficiency. Over time, when you do it, is you also got to realize that these guys get coached by other coaches, especially in football. There's a fucking outside linebackers coach. Like there's a guy out there who's only focused on outside linebackers, and he coaches 3 people, and he makes a ton of money. And then, not to mention the skills coaches. And I've talked about this before. It's like, the technical side gets you into the door of being a good strength coach. The tactical side gets you in the door of the conversation of being a good coach. And those are 2 different things. One hinges on technical, one hinges on tactical. And the tactical being communication. You got to realize that, like, yeah, look, in some cases, and they do report cards every year. Baltimore Ravens had a famously low score, and the entire staff got axed. And, I would say the bar of the entire strength and conditioning field is, like everything, it's elevating, and people are coming in with great ideas, and they're creative, and they're well intended, and they're well compensated, and it's great. But if you're a great communicator as a strength coach, you now subconsciously start to enter into the realm of the other great communicators that also operate as coaches. So it's one thing to surpass a strength coach who has a particular ethos that's not maybe well thought out. But if you can communicate well, can you communicate to the point where these guys who work with, a Saban, the legendary coach out of Alabama, or Bill Belichick? We've had a handful of guys who have won Super Bowls under Bill Belichick, right? Like, and the list goes on and on. Like, shout out to the Florida Panthers. They just won a Stanley Cup under Paul Maurice, right? Paul Maurice, if you watch Paul Maurice in press conferences, he's one of the most charismatic people in the world. It's like, you should get confident enough in your technical abilities that your next mile marker to improve your service, your product as a coach, as a person, is communication. Then that opens up, like, yeah, good fucking luck. Good luck. But like, honestly, that should still be your aim. Like, how can I connect on a level that these guys connect with their other coaches, right? And the technical competency gets you in the door. We start stacking up wins. People like Belichick and Saban because they got a ton of rings on their fingers, right? Because they stack up wins. But that's not going to get you on the Christmas card list. That doesn't get you a jersey sent to you in the preseason, right? That doesn't get you tickets. That doesn't get you to be the person that they call when shit really goes wrong. It's the communication piece. So it's like, the first milestone for me was like, okay, can I be in the conversation of a guy going like, wow, this is better than what I get at X, Y, and Z team. Cool. You're not done there. The next step is like, how can I be able to interpret these situations better, start to read people better, communicate better, so that I can continue to help this person and be that technical beacon into the future. So that's my end of spiel, because I think that's universal. That's universal when it comes to coaching and strength coaching. Like when it comes to online PT, all that stuff. And we see it, like, we look at the guys that work with us that run their own coaching businesses. They are exceptional because they are exceptional communicators.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, I mean, not to harp on it, but like, I think to reiterate what you said, I think competence builds confidence, right? And the framework, the thought process around this is the competence. You have to have the competence to be confident. And once you have that confidence, then that's going to be your base level, I guess, your entry point into communicating this stuff. You can talk about the X's and O's, the nuts and bolts of training, and then you need to learn the interpersonal side. And once you can build on the interpersonal side, then that's going to be the thing that allows you to get those personal connections, that allows you to get your foot in the door, that allows you to make changes on these people that really need it. but they're not going to accept that until they trust you.
And one thing I learned from L3 is always leave on a high note. So we will do that right now. George Costanza, we'll leave on a high note. So guys, as mentioned before, I know we talked a lot about L1, L2, L3. We don't do it very often. If we do it often, it's annoying. Let us know. I don't think we do it often. And we don't try to sell you any other shit. Maybe we should. Shout out Marek Health.
Yeah.
But
that counts, right?
Prescript level 1 up for sale. The opt-in list is currently up on the website, www.pre-script.com. Level 2 is up for sale now. It's an invite only. If you take an L1, shoot us an email or DM me or Jiunta, and we'll get that sorted, or the Prescript or RX Radio page, whatever you find easiest, and we'll send you over that invite for the September semester. September is going to make you eligible for the January L3. So without any further ado, appreciate you guys hanging out. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.